It's early.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to an emergency edition of the Slash Film Daily podcast. There was some big news this morning, and we want to get into it. With me on today's podcast are Ben Pearson
Hey, what's up?
and Hoai-Tran Bui.
Hello, everyone.
And this is Peter Soretta. If it's big news, it's probably big Star Wars news. HT, you wrote the news for the site. What do we know?
So, Lucasfilm has officially hired JJ Abrams to replace Collin Trevorrow as the director of Star Wars Episode 9. Abrams is returning to the Star Wars franchise after having directed Star Wars The Force Awakens in 2015, and he has been hired to write and direct Star Wars Episode 9. He's going to be co-writing alongside Chris Terrio, who has written Batman v Superman and Argo. So this is big news, as you guys will know, because Collin Trevorrow left the project due to creative differences, allegedly last week. And Star Wars Episode 9 was without a director for about a week. And we were quite in a tizzy trying to figure out who would be the next director. So now it is officially Abrams returning to the director's chair after having left to leave Rian Johnson for Episode 8. And now he's back to finish the trilogy, or the new trilogy of Star Wars.
Yeah, and we had speculated who would take this position, and we thought it was going to be Rian Johnson, and apparently Rian Johnson turned it down, or at least according to one of the reports, which is interesting because he said he would like to make another Star Wars movie. Maybe I've heard that he's been overworked, or not overworked, but yeah, he's just tired. So maybe he needs a break.
Yeah, not too surprising.
Yeah, so JJ as director, my first impression is this is the safe choice. You know, he's done it before. Bring him back. He can do it again. And, part of me is, like, glad that he's going to get to finish what he started. He's going to be able to bookend this trilogy. But on the other end of things, I don't quite believe that he planned anything out for this trilogy. I think JJ is a great starter. He comes in and he writes a pilot episode that's amazing, and then people go with that. And they create their own thing, kind of like Lost. Mm-hmm. I don't think he had an idea of where this trilogy was going to go. That worries me. What about you guys?
Well, Abrams is both a safe choice and an unusual choice because he and Kathleen Kennedy allegedly butted heads through the course of Star Wars The Force Awakens over script rewrites, I think. And it didn't seem likely that she would return to someone who she conflicted with before because of all the drama that has been going on for the past couple months with Phil Lord and Chris Miller, and with Collin Trevorrow and the alleged behind-the-scenes drama and conflicts that Kathleen Kennedy has been having with her Star Wars directors. But it seems that she and Abrams, know each other's processes now, and they are willing to. She's willing to go for a safe choice, or at least a dependable director that she knows, even if she has had clashes with him in the past.
I have to imagine that this bodes well for Rian Johnson's The Last Jedi, because Abrams would not take this job if he thought that he was walking into a trap or walking into a bad situation. He is a smart guy. He realizes that there's a tremendous amount of pressure on whoever it was that was going to be finishing off this trilogy. And I have to think that he's read the script, probably seen the movie at this point, because as far as I understand it, the movie is basically done at this point, The Last Jedi.
Yeah.
So he clearly has an idea of what to do and how to bring this together. He's not just coming in to direct it, he's also co-writing it. So I would like to think that he has probably had some thoughts about where the whole thing should end up, maybe even as early as when he was making The Force Awakens. And then he stepped away, let Rian Johnson come on, and then now that the opportunity has presented itself, he's gonna just pick up the ball and keep running with it. So I feel like this is a good sign for The Last Jedi, because it means that it's leaving the franchise in a place where Abrams is comfortable picking up the ball again.
Yeah, it is strange too, because I heard that JJ Abrams had no interest in doing more Star Wars. Like, I think to give you an example, Walt Disney Imagineering wanted him to be involved with Star Wars Land, and after making Force Awakens, he was kind of like, "No, I'm done. I made my Star Wars movie. I'm out."
Wow.
And I think making a Star Wars movie is incredibly stressful, and I think he was happy with what he made, and but they must have offered him something. And you mentioned conflicts. I know there was some script conflicts. There was some. I think early on, like, he wanted Bad Robot to be the production company for all three of the Star Wars trilogy. And
yeah, I heard that too.
Yeah, Lucasfilm pushed back and Kathleen Kennedy pushed back on that. There were some conflicts. So I don't know. I just didn't think he was going to come back. We should probably address one of the big criticisms everybody is probably saying that did not like Force Awakens or had problems with Force Awakens, which is not me, but is that Force Awakens was too much of a rehash of A New Hope. I don't think he's going to do that this time around. I think Abrams went into Force Awakens, and his purpose of that, here's a quote from slashfilm.com from Abrams. The Force Awakens was a bridge and a kind of reminder. The audience needed to be reminded that what Star Wars is, but it needed to establish with something familiar, with a sense of where we are going. With a sense of where we are going to new lands, which is very much what 8 and 9 will do. So, I don't know. I think his, Star Wars Episode 9 is going to be the crazy new worlds and new places and new people. It's not going to be a rehash of Return of the Jedi. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I did like Force Awakens, though I was aware of how similar it was and how much of an ardent homage it was to A New Hope. But I think that Abrams made a really good balance of bringing in that nostalgia factor and of reintroducing it and rebranding it for a new generation. It's interesting because Collin Trevorrow, one of his big the big appeal about him was that he brought Jurassic World into this new era as well, and it was also a very major nostalgia sort of vehicle, but it successfully brought it into a new story with new characters. And so I think that there may be that sort of parallel to, like, I don't think that the Episode 9 will be a complete nostalgia rehash, but I think that they will continue, I guess, that through line of nostalgia.
I think Abrams was in a tremendously difficult position with The Force Awakens, sort of under the gun as far as production time, having to write that script as quickly as he and Lawrence Kasdan did, and then deliver something that audiences would love, that would completely bring everybody back into the awe and wonder of Star Wars instead of, sort of the bad taste that the prequels left in our mouths. And I think he did an excellent job with that movie. Yes, there are plenty of similarities, but I do think that he is going to, there would be no point to him coming back just to do a rehash of Return of the Jedi. I have to think that he is going to use his own movie as a launch pad, and then piggyback off of what Rian Johnson has done and take it to its natural conclusion point. I don't even think The Last Jedi is going to leave the franchise in a position in which it would make sense to essentially remake Return of the Jedi. From everything we've heard, it seems like The Last Jedi is going to be a pretty divisive film and leave people wondering about the future of the franchise. So I don't think it's going to be I don't think that movie is going to be a rehash of Empire Strikes Back, and I certainly don't think that Abrams' Episode 9 is going to be a rehash of Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, everybody I've talked to that have seen The Last Jedi says, almost everybody I've talked to has really enjoyed it. Lucasfilm is supposedly over the moon with it, but I've almost the singular thing that I hear in everybody is that it's different, and it's going to probably not sit well with some Star Wars fans. It's going to be divisive.
I think that's exciting.
Yeah, that is exciting. But one person I know that has seen the movie, messaged me after this news came up saying that he's happy that JJ Abrams coming on because he, didn't like some of the choices that Rian Johnson went with. So take that for what it's worth.
Peter, it's probably worth mentioning. I just went back and looked. We wrote an article on Slash Film in January of this year in which Abrams talked about how he was basically done with making reboots and sort of franchise films. And I thought the quote was worth reading now. He said, I feel incredibly lucky to have gotten involved in things that I loved when I was a kid. But I don't feel any desire to do that again. I feel like I've done enough of that I'm more excited about working on things that are original ideas that perhaps one day someone else will have to reboot. I do think that if you're telling a story that is not moving anything forward, not introducing anything that's relevant, that's not creating a new mythology or an extension of it, then a complete remake of something feels like a mistake. So it seems like he had to be convinced probably to come back to this based on that statement. But I'm excited about him coming back. I know people are probably rolling their eyes at this choice, but I do think that it's going to be a solid movie at the very baseline. It's going to be well put together, quickly constructed, strongly constructed, and we know just Abrams has a basic competency in filmmaking and an energy that I would prefer to somebody like Stephen Daldry every single day of the week. So we know it's going to be an exciting movie, and it's going to be something that Star Wars fans, will probably enjoy. I don't think that there's much downside to bringing Abrams back on right here.
I think while Abrams is Sorry, continue.
I was just going to say that the quote from The Godfather comes to mind. Just when I thought I was out, they pull me back in.
Yeah.
Go on, HD. I'm sorry.
Oh, no problem. I think while Abrams is considered a safe choice, he is not as a traditional director as Ron Howard with the Han Solo film, per se. He is still part of this new generation of filmmakers, the post-Spielbergs, so to speak. And he still has a refreshing and different perspective than what Kathleen Kennedy could have gone for, I think, in terms of just like very systemic, very old guard directors.
One of the other downsides of JJ Abrams, I'm a big JJ Abrams fan, but I've heard this from almost everybody that's worked with him, is that he's always searching for the better idea. And that's a good thing and a bad thing, because he sometimes some of the great things that we've seen in his work are things that he found late into production. But also that results in him notoriously changing things throughout production. And then, you get a film like The Force Awakens where it feels like there's moments that are from another draft of the script because, there was reshoots and there's this moment with Han and Rey that they have together that seems kind of weird. And, I don't know, it just seems like that is kind of a downside to JJ Abrams. But hopefully he goes into this. And the other thing before we get to writer is, this film was supposed to come out in May of
2019.
2019.
I don't think that's going to happen now. JJ Abrams is notoriously, with Force Awakens, he had them pushed back from May to December because he wanted more time. Mm-hmm. I think this is going to get pushed back to December.
Yeah, that seems like a safe bet. I would definitely put money on that.
What were you going to say, Ben? Sorry.
Yeah, that's all I was going to bring up, actually, was the idea that Abrams probably needs a little bit more time with this. I would guess that because of his history with The Force Awakens and how that production came to be, and I think Kennedy famously backed him in that scenario against Bob Iger, who is the president or whatever, CEO of Disney. And Iger did not want to delay the movie, but Kennedy had Abrams back in that situation, as far as I remember it. Is that right, Peter?
Yeah, I believe that to be the case.
Okay, so yeah, I wonder if she's going to be understanding of his situation here and, allow him the time to, because that's the big thing, right? Is that Collin Trevorrow and Jack Thorne were writing this movie. And now it says that Abrams and Chris Terrio are going to be writing the film, but that essentially means that they're going to be starting from scratch, presumably. So all of that work that Trevorrow and Thorne has done is probably getting thrown out. So Abrams, I feel like, is going to want some time to rework this thing from the ground up. And yeah, that's probably going to result in a delayed film.
Okay, let's talk about the writer, Chris Terrio. He is going to be co-writing with JJ Abrams. He won an Academy Award for Argo in 2012. He rewrote David S. Goyer's script for Batman vs. Superman, Dawn of Justice. And he co-wrote the story treatment for Justice League and did a rewrite for Ben Affleck's The Batman, which we will never see, or not that version of it anyways. I wouldn't let those last 3 Warner Brothers credits, shade this. I think we just got to look at Argo. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's the only thing that we can look at here, because the rest of those are rewrites. What do you guys think of Chris?
Yeah, I mean, he's still an Academy Award-winning screenwriter. So I'm not a huge fan of the Batman v Superman and the other DC film scripts, but again, he is also a rewriter in those regards. So I wouldn't hold them too much against him. I don't know much about him outside of Argo and outside of those DC film scripts, but if he and Abrams are writing it together, then it could possibly work, because Abrams, like you said, is a really great ideas man. And if he has someone who is a good partner in that regard and is able to sort of flesh it out, then it could create a great script. Again, this is very early process, so we don't really know much about it.
I'm not crazy about Chris Terrio as a writer. I feel like the Oscar-winning screenwriter thing lost any sort of credibility when you think that Akiva Goldsman is an Oscar-winning screenwriter. So, it's.
But what are your thoughts on Argo?
Argo is fine. I don't really think it was the best picture of that year or the best written movie of that year. It's just like a fine movie. It's a dad movie or something like that. That's sort of how I look at that film. It's well constructed, but I just didn't really see anything in it that jumped out at me as like, holy shit, this is a guy to watch. The writer of this movie is like somebody I should really pay attention to. And then you're talking about Justice League and Batman vs Superman and all that stuff. I think that those movies are essentially made by committee, so I don't really think that you could point a finger at Chris Terrio for Batman versus Superman's faults, for example. So it's the bigger question for me is like, why isn't Lawrence Kasdan coming back to co-write this with Abrams? Do you know anything about that relationship, Peter, on The Force Awakens? Because those two produced something or created something that fans generally loved with The Force Awakens. I'm wondering why Kasdan isn't the writing partner once again here.
Well, I know on the press tour, JJ Abrams kept on calling Kasdan his hero, his mentor, whatever, just compliment. It seemed like they had a good relationship. I know Kasdan said that he was done with Star Wars or writing Star Wars after Han Solo. So maybe it's just, he doesn't want to be stuck in this franchise.
Interesting. Yeah, I hadn't heard that. Okay.
Who knows?
Yeah,
another thing, I feel like we're going to all have to revisit Chris Terrio wrote and directed a film called Heights, which premiered at the Sundance Film Festival. It was released, I think, in 2005 by Sony Picture Classics. And it's one of those, like, it follows a pivotal 24 hours and an interconnected lives of New Yorkers kind of film of, like, the mid-2000s, when all that was kind of happening. It had Glenn Close, Elizabeth Banks, James Marsden, Jesse Bradford, Isabella Rossellini, a bunch of other people. I'm not sure if it's any good, but I feel like after this announcement, I'm going to have to go check this out.
Yeah, for sure.
So I guess the real question now is how long until JJ Abrams gets fired?
I don't think that's going to happen. Do you think that's a possibility for real?
I didn't think it was a possibility of any of these things happening. I didn't think it was a possibility that Lord and Miller, after they started production, 2/3 of the way through production, would be removed. So I wouldn't put anything past them. But I as much as it's been said that Kathleen Kennedy and J.J. Abrams had conflicts on Force Awakens, they were able to work it out. They're both professionals. I don't think it's going to happen. I mean, HT, you had a had a phrasing on this.
Oh, what was my phrasing?
That your tweet on Twitter.
Oh. This is it's a little inappropriate, but my take was better a bitch you know than a bitch you don't.
I think there is something to that.
Yeah.
I also want to note that Michelle Rejwan is still on board as producer. She's someone that kind of started as casting director, did some associate producing for Bad Robot and Clover on Super 8 and some other films. And Collin Trevorrow, when he was attacked for the whole male white privilege thing, kind of went out of his way in the background to kind of try to hire females around him. And one of them he pushed for was Michelle, who has never produced any, full-on producer, any film. And she's going to be producing a Star Wars movie for her first film. So it's just good that Kathleen Kennedy and JJ Abrams are keeping Michelle on as a full producer on Star Wars Episode 9. I'm glad to see that.
Yeah, for sure.
That's really commendable, yeah.
Okay, guys. So any last thoughts? Do either of you have any hopes, dreams, things you don't want to see from the JJ Abrams Star Wars Episode 9?
I mean, I have one clear hope, and that it's that JJ Abrams gives us the Poe and Finn love story that we deserve.
You know what? JJ Abrams did actually come out after Force Awakens when all that stuff, the Finn-Poe relationship was kind of taking off, and said that they should have a gay character on screen in Star Wars. So if that is not in Star Wars The Last Jedi, JJ, it's now your turn. You have the ball. Let's see.
I was like kind of joking, but kind of not. That would be pretty sweet.
No,
so.
I'd be down for that.
It's not going to be Poe and Finn. I think in the books or comics or something, it's already been canonized that they're not gay. But yes, I know you're joking, but you know what? He did say that. He was asked that, and he did say that. So who knows? How about you, HT?
My hope is that Abrams, well, you know how he was saying that he wants to go back to doing original movies and original stories. My hope is that he kind of goes back to his crazy, wild ideas that he first pitched back in the Lost pilot episode and just, goes wild. He doesn't have all those expectations that Force Awakens had of bridging the old and the new. Now he has only to pick up where Rian Johnson left off with Last Jedi and hopefully just go ham. Yeah. I want to see crazy JJ Abrams.
Oh, and that reminds me, talking about Lost, and I know, Peter, you mentioned that earlier. One last thought for me. I wonder if Abrams, being the Abrams that we know, if he's going to leave, maybe even seed new things into Episode 9 that can get picked up later on, because we're not really sure what the future of the saga movies looks like beyond Episode 9, right? I think we've heard some rumblings about that, but Lucasfilm has never outright said, this is just going to be a trilogy and then we're stopping this story at Episode 9. Like, they could theoretically keep going with another trilogy, locking down Finn, Rey, Poe, Kylo Ren, whoever survives this new trilogy. So I would not be surprised, knowing Abrams and the way he loves to sort of slowly build mythology and plant seeds, if he provides a satisfying arc to this trilogy in Episode 9, but at the same time leaves some things dangling to potentially continue the story in a new trilogy.
Oh, I think you're going to have to leave some things dangling. I don't think that we're going to get the literal on-the-nose cliffhanger that we got in Force Awakens. We're going to get more of a ending, but and you know what? Who knows? They might take, they've been doing a Star Wars film every 2 years, or Skywalker Saga film every 2 years, and I think they might take a break from that. Who knows? We don't know. As for my hopes, I hope that there's no Death Star. We're done with the Death Star. We don't need a Death Star. We don't need a Death Planet. We don't need a Death Universe. JJ, please We just don't need it. And the other thing is, there's been a lot of talk about Leia and Carrie Fisher. I know part of the whole Collin Trevorrow equation is he couldn't get that aspect of it right. What they're going to do with Carrie Fisher's character, oh my God.